everybody doing? Karen Butler with Shoot Like a Girl, and we are bringing you our podcast with my cohort, Krista there, and we also have Teddy. I can't talk. If y'all can tell, I'm in my car. Why am I in my car? Well, it's called you leave the house and you don't bring your keys. So I locked myself out of the house. Lots of fun there for me.
We've been there at some point in time.
It's okay. I mean, there's a reason for everything. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm really excited for this discussion because I don't know if y'all know, but my husband, we're going to talk today about women and muzzleloaders. And my husband has built his own muzzleloader rifle from a block of wood and is building one for me. So I'll have my own someday in time, and I'm very excited for it. And I'll tell you all about shooting it later, or shooting his muzzleloader later. But I'm excited. So Krista, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited. Today's Thursday, and it's the Thursday before a show. So that means tomorrow we hop on a plane and we are super excited to come out to Pearland, Texas. Now, I've been calling it Pearl Land, like Pearl Land, yeah. But apparently it's Pearland. So I'm sure we'll get corrected on that a few times while we're there. It's in the Houston community, and we look forward to coming this weekend. The weather is going to be beautiful. And if you guys are in that area, I know someone that watched last week mentioned they were in the area and they were going to come out and check out the Gun Toting Mama person while we're there. So we hope to see you at that Bass Pro. We'll be there Saturday and Sunday from 9 to 5 on Saturday and 10 to 4 on Sunday. Yeah.
Yay. All right. Yay. So, Peggy, tell us a little bit about you and what brought you to this.
Wait. Oh, I got to start this. Sorry. So for those that maybe aren't aware, Peggy is she's one of us, right? So she's been following and watching us on lives. We interact with her at almost every live. We'll say, hey, Peggy, when she says, hi, everyone. We were in Post Falls, Idaho last year, where that was our second show from our event after the COVID restart. And Peggy drove over. It was like 3 or some odd hours, right? 3 or 4 hours. 5. Peggy drove over and she's at the trailer, and it's a giant event. We have the most women we've had in a long time. It's kind of exciting for us, and we're sort of scatterbrained. And she walks up, she says, hi, I'm Peggy Barchi. Just like,
yeah.
So she is one of us. We're glad you get to join us and bring your knowledge of women in history with the muzzleloader. I can't even say it. Muzzleloader. So Peggy, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this is even part of your life and where it interacts?
Well, first of all, it feels really weird to be on this end. I should be watching somebody this week, but I'm not. I'm here with you guys. So how I got started in this, I'm the baby of 5 kids by a whole lot of years. My nearest sibling's 11 years older than I am. And my 2 nearest siblings, who are 11 and 12 years older, are brothers. My sisters take no responsibility of how I turned out. They were 17 and 19 and pretty much out of the house by the time I came along. So I grew up with 2 big brothers, but mainly my brother Donald is the one who got me into the shooting sports at a very young age. I mean, I was toting around dart guns, I was toting around BB guns, then shotguns. Then big brother got me into archery, and I shot competitively in archery in high school. And then he decided, remember, this is back in the 70s when it's just after the Jeremiah Johnson movie came out and stuff and all that. So he decided to get a muzzleloader when I was about 12, 13 years old. So I helped him learn how to run the lead round balls for his muzzleloader. And I was intrigued with them because even back then I was a quirky child and I loved history. So fast forward to, about 30 years. And I wanted to get into muzzleloading hunting with my brother who lives out here in Seattle. My husband and I had moved out here. My husband was game to try muzzleloading. And so that's actually how I got my first deer, was with a muzzleloader before I ever got it with a modern firearm.
You better get it with the first shot.
I did too. Dropped it with the first shot. I can't say that always happens with all my hunting endeavors, but with the muzzleloader, it did. So anyway, fast forward another 15 years, and I somehow found myself working at a living history fort, Fort Nisqually in Tacoma, Washington, as their event coordinator. And we often were firing black powder firearms there because it was a Hudson Bay Company fur trade thing. So muzzleloaders were a big thing. Well, I had one of the women volunteers who was volunteering for me say, hey, can I bring my muzzleloader in and fire during one of the events? And I went back to the staff. I said, let me look into it. I said, I don't know if it's historically accurate or not to have a woman firing a muzzleloader here. So I went back to the rest of the staff, and they said, we think so, but do the research, Peggy. And so that's how I got into this whole thing for learning about the history of women and firearms, as well as being into muzzleloading hunting on my own and doing all that. So that's where everything today comes from, as because of one simple volunteer asking me if she could fire a muzzleloader at our event. Since that time, I no longer work at the fort. However, I now go back there and volunteer. And I also was the one who wrote their black powder guidelines for volunteers at the fort about 15, 17 years ago, including how to fire the fort's cannon. So I do muzzleloaders of all sorts and kinds. But Karen, I'm really intrigued with the muzzleloader that your husband built, because I've put muzzleloading kits together, but I've never built one completely from a chunk of wood on. So
it's really good. He went and took a class with Ian Pratt, who's like one of the really big, so he just loves it, and I love it, and I want to hear about the history. But I was always a little bit scared to shoot. They're so long, and I don't know if people are familiar with muzzleloaders, but you basically, it's a flintlock, and so you've got to put a little like piece of material in, you got to put the powder in, you got to put a piece of material in with the ball and ram it down there, and then it ignites it. But I was kind of scared of it because it's long. It's like, as big as me. It's tall. And I was a little scared, but was hardly any recoil, and it was so much fun to shoot, and you just felt so great, and it's so accurate, which was surprising as well. So tell us a little bit about the history of it and women.
Okay. Yeah, well, black powder weapons go way back, centuries back to the Chinese, basically, and all that. And then you get up into like the 14th century or so, and instead of having a flintlock or whatever, they had, matchlocks, which was basically a burning string that would then dip down into powder and fire something off through it too. Once you get up to the late 1600s into the 1700s, 1800s, you're getting into your flintlock, which is what you're talking about. And some of the flintlock rifles or smoothbores can be, like you said, as tall as you are. Some of them were a little bit shorter, but for the accuracy, it's just like modern rifles. The longer barrel helps with the spin of the bullet and all that. Right here, I'm going to show you the example, if I can get it there, of a flintlock. And that's basically it, how a flintlock lock looks. If you have ever heard the saying lock, stock, and barrel, it's coming from the muzzleloaders. Basically, I'm holding a pistol here just because it's shorter. You'd have, your stock, you have your lock, and then you have, let's see, the barrel. Let me get it over here, right there. You can sort of see the barrel there. So that's where you get some of those old sayings like lock, stock, and barrel. So with the flintlock, and I can show you, and you guys are all about safety. So, I have it. I know it's unloaded, but I'm being safe. I'm keeping it in a safe direction, or keeping my finger off there. But I can show you because there's no powder and nothing in this flintlock. Another saying you might have heard back in the day is to not go off half cocked. I just got that so that it's at half cocked, and basically it meant if with a muzzle loader you pull the trigger and it's on half cock, if it goes forward, that's a bad thing. Just like if you fly off the handle and go off half cocked, it's a bad thing. Another one of those things where you get the saying from. But if I were really going to be using this muzzle loader, the first thing I would do is use a powder flask of some kind like this, pour the powder into a powder measure, pour that into there. You don't ever, and I tell this to muzzleloaders when I'm training new people with muzzleloaders, you don't ever pour your powder from the flask directly into the gun, even though you'll see it in all the old movies and stuff. Basically, if you have a spark left over from the shot before that, you're holding a bomb in your hand, potentially, if that sparks and comes up. So I always tell folks, use the powder measure to be safe. So you'd pour your powder in, then you'd put a lead ball or whatever shaped bullet you have, and you stuff it down there using the ramrod like that. And so in this, I would go like this and just drop it down there and stuff the ball down. I might put a patch on there, depends on the type of bullet you need to use. And then you would pour, again, using some kind of measure, you'd pour a little bit of priming powder, if you can see that pan right here. You pour the powder in there. Now you shut your frizzen, which is just a piece of steel there. And again, I have this on half cock so that it can't automatically, accidentally go off. Then I'm going to pull the hammer back to full cock like that. And if I can get this close enough, you may be able to see it spark when I pull it. I don't know whether anybody could see the sparks, but it did actually spark. And then the spark goes into that pan, which then causes an ignition. It goes into the touch hole, which goes into the powder that you poured in there in the first place. And then if everything goes right, it goes boom, and the bullet goes out the barrel. So that's your basic muzzleloading 101 on how you load and how you fire.
That's like muzzleloading speed style, right?
It is.
Lesson in it.
It is. Now, there's another type of muzzleloader that started to come around in the 1830s or so. And depending on who you talk to and what research, this is your percussion cap muzzleloader. Now, the difference with this one is that instead of it, I got to go the other direction, instead of it having a frizzen and a pan to put powder in, it would have these little caps like this. If I can get the caps. Okay, come on. There they are. There's the little caps. And you put that on this little piece that's called the nipple right there. I've got a used cap here so that I don't screw it up, that I'll put on here if I don't drop it on the floor and lose it. So let's see here. All right, so I've put my cap on there. And then if I pull the trigger, the hammer comes down. There's actually a little bit of igniting powder inside the cap. And when you do that, that would cause the ignition go into the barrel and has the ball go flying out. Basically your bullet going flying out. So that's your muzzle loader. You're going from the flintlock to the percussion cap is basically the next step in the technology. However, in the history, and I'm going to show you this one if I can. This is my favorite muzzle loader of all of them. This is my 1820 Reproduction Hudson Bay Company trade musket. And it's a smooth bore, just like a shotgun is. So for this, I could put a patched ball down it to shoot like a bullet, or you can put little lead pellets, just like a shotgun, down and use it like a shotgun. Or if you really didn't have any of your bullets or that, you could put little stones or whatever you wanted down. These things were pretty indestructible. They were mainly used to trade with the Native Americans, both across by the fur trade companies in Canada and across the U.S. and stuff. And this is the gun that I primarily like to hunt with. So just because that one's a kick in the pants, it's a hoot and a half to fire that one.
A hoot and a half.
A hoot and a half.
Well,
and
can you,
yeah,
I hate to interrupt you, but I feel like we're going to run out of time before we get all of the tidbits of information. Just because it's a lot of information, and I want to make sure we touch on the female part of it, the women in history, before we end our call tonight.
And that's exactly what I was going to get to. So when you look through the history, there's some really significant ones, but a lot of times you don't hear about the women and guns. Part of that, from what I've seen trying to research it, is it just wasn't considered ladylike. I think there were a whole lot more women out there who knew how to use firearms, but they didn't talk about it. They didn't journal about it much. However, out here in the Pacific Northwest, I finally found a few things about it. With the Native American tribes, a lot of these firearms, especially the trade guns, were used as part of marriage dowries. So you hear about the bridegroom having to bring his bride blankets and things like so many rifles or musket balls or powder. So that's one way that we were hearing that women were in with the whole firearm thing. However, there were a few out here I can talk about where we know there was one woman out here in the Tacoma, what's now the Tacoma area, who was an older woman, and she apparently was married to a fellow, and she was Native American or mixed blood, and he apparently was pretty abusive towards her, because in one of the journals from one of the clerks at Fort Nisqually, they mentioned that she had a firearm, but apparently she did use it in self-defense with the, well, soon-to-be ex-husband. I think he was ex-husband 6 feet under, too. So that was one account that I was able to find of a woman using the firearm in self-defense. Some of the other ones were during what were at that time called the Puget Sound Indian Wars and stuff. There was a woman who they were in a stockade or a blockhouse, and she mentioned that, and this was in the mid-1850s, that the fellow who was in charge of the blockade, because they were afraid they were going to get attacked, he says, he gave me a musket to carry, and I practiced loading and firing at a mark, and had it become necessary, would have used it in defense of my home and country. So that's one. But probably my very favorite quote of women in history, especially out here in the Pacific Northwest, happened at Fort Nisqually itself. One of the clerks, Edward Huggins, he left us lots of journals as an older man about his time as a clerk there. Well, one year he was clerking in the sales shop, which was basically the trading part of the Hudson's Bay Company Post, and some Native Americans did come in. According to him, he said that some 3 down sound, meaning down Puget Sound Indians, notorious characters, which resulted in a serious quarrel between the Indians and myself. They threatened to seriously hurt me and were very saucy. I couldn't stand it and foolishly attempted to capture one of the fellows, and when he suddenly turned and drew a knife, he chased him out of the store, out of the fort, and then suddenly realized he was outside with no weapon himself, and he was surrounded by these 3 guys who did have weapons. Well, he heard his boss yelling at him to come back into the fort, and when he turned around, he suddenly realized several of the people in the fort, including his future mother-in-law, Mrs. Josette Work, was standing there, and as he described it, he said an incident happened. He turned around, she was armed, and he says, which caused the old lady to show her mettle. And so she was armed and amongst all of them, willing to back him up, armed and ready if necessary. So that's my favorite history. But there are other women out there in history you might hear about. It's just, you don't hear a lot about them because it just wasn't considered ladylike. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of muzzleloading 101 plus a little history of women in muzzleloading.
That's great. Thank you. It's interesting. So I have a passion for Project Appleseed. And the same thing, there are very few female stories. There are some, and the ones that we hear are very entertaining. It just didn't get the same attention, I guess, in the world as the traditional stories did.
Yeah, it seems like until we get to the times of Annie Oakley, you just don't hear about women with firearms much.
Right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. We're actually, I think, like almost 20 minutes in. Sorry, I can't really see very well. So for all of you that are watching, whether you're watching live or in replay, we've got, because of Peggy, we've got a special 19th century package she's going to send you. So it'll be a good historical package. I'm not going to share with you what it is. It's going to be a secret. But you've got to answer a question. And I'm trying to come up with a really good question. So let's think about, list your fame. Here's the, whoever puts this answer in their comment, that's who we'll draw from. Who was your favorite female in history? March is the month of women's history. right? So let's choose our favorite female in history. That is a tongue twister. Do not try to say that quickly.
Or
Thank
muzzleloader.
you again for joining us.
And if anybody ever has muzzle loading questions, forward them to me and I'll do my best to answer them.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone. So let's finish up for tonight.
I have to tell you.
Oh, Karen, go ahead.
Yep. Perland. Thanks so much for stopping by and being part of our Facebook Live and talking to us about.
You got bad signal, Karen.
Yeah.
You're sputtering out. So
used it in self-defense or in the defense of their love. Go ahead, take it, Krista. Then.
You may have to add that, Karen, because you cut out for the majority of it. Really quickly, let's do our drawing from last week for Gun Toting Mamas. We ask that you comment on your the bag, the perfect bag for you, what you would like to see created. I will pull the comment and send it to Claudia. But the winner, who I did see them watching earlier because they said hello, ladies, is Kaylee Geist. So Kaylee, I'll reach out to you.
Kaylee.
I'll reach out to you and get your mailing address
Oh
and
my gosh.
connect with Claudia. And so she will then send you over the bag. Next week in our live, we will be speaking with Renee Ernst from True Timber. Turkey season is coming, and she's going to share with us the things we need to know about turkey camouflage. And at that live, we'll announce or choose the winner for this special secret mystery 19th century box from Peggy. All right, everyone, y'all have a good night, and we'll see you in Pearland if you're in Texas. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Thank you, Peggy.
Sure thing. Safe travels, ladies.
Thank you. Bye, Karen.